Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and this is the first edition of some alignments, combination, projections. We're going to be looking at projections, scenarios, all kinds of things for different parts of the team. Basically, today we're focusing on the O-line for 2023. A lot of this, again, are projections, scenarios, nothing definitive. So I want to have a little bit of fun with it. I want to get a little creative. You'll see when we get there. But I'm trying to see, like, what's the offensive line like right now, the starting offensive line, if we were to have a game, say, tomorrow. What's it more than likely going to be at some point during training camp? What's it more than likely going to be by the time we get to week 1? And what's the highest ceiling offensive line that we could throw out there? If everybody ends up reaching their ceiling and they're the best that they could potentially be, that they could possibly be, what would be the best offensive line that we could throw out there? Like, what would be our best case scenario? So we're going to dive into a bunch of scenarios, all that type of stuff. And so again, we're here to have fun with it, but to also do a little bit of projecting, a little bit of guessing, but more so just looking at scenarios and looking at interesting things like, okay, if this happens, we can do this, we can do that, we can put this person here for this situation, all that type of stuff. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel with the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, be on the lookout for more videos like this. I know for a fact the next one is going to be defensive alignments and combinations, scenarios, projections, and things like that, where if we're looking at like a 4-2-5 or a 5-1-5 or a 5-2-4 and things like that. We're going to take a look at all kinds of defensive if we're trying to stop the run, if we're trying to focus on stopping the pass and things like that. So, man, make sure you stay tuned for all of that, and also be on the lookout for all of the rookie film sessions I'm working on. We already did the Manuel Forbes one. Next is Quan Martin. We're going to work our way all the way down, and we're even going to do some undrafted free agents, so stay tuned for those. Without further ado, let's get it. All right, so we got to start with the offensive line as it is today. What is the starting offensive line leaving mandatory mini camps heading into training camp? As of right now, we're pretty much like a fully healthy team, like literally as healthy as a team could get for the NFL. Like, the NFL is a violent sport. It's just impossible for everybody to be 100% healthy. That's just unrealistic to expect out of any sport, let alone football. But as of today, what is our starting offensive line looking like? Well, it gets a little interesting. As of right now, and I've already done reports on it, we've already talked about it through voluntary OTAs, and more recently and more importantly, the thing that happened, like what we just saw the last day of mandatory minicamps, this was our starting offensive line as of today. Again, starting from left to right: left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle. You have Charles Leno as your starting left tackle, obviously. Andrew Wiley is your starting right tackle, obviously, as well. You can expect those. We already know that. And then Andrew Wiley, I mean, he's technically versatile enough to where if you want to play him in either guard position, that can work as well. I would prefer him at guard over left tackle. But as of right now, with the way our offensive line is currently constructed, I for sure prefer him at right tackle where he's currently at. And last time we saw him start at right tackle in an NFL game, it was a Super Bowl against arguably one of the best defensive lines in the NFL against the Eagles, and he pretty much shut down everybody he was blocking, most notably Hassan Reddick, who a lot of offensive linemen are afraid of. But Eric Bieniemy did a great job of calling the right plays to put Andrew Wiley in the right situations to succeed against Hassan Reddick. So Eric Bieniemy coming over with Andrew Wiley to continue being his offensive coordinator before another team, so I'm expecting great things out of Andrew Wiley. Charles Leno, I feel like he gets a little bit too much hate, but at the same time, I can see, like, I mean, you pretty much expect when he goes against a guy like Nick Bosa, some of the best edge rushers in the NFL, they're going to get the best of them. But it's sad because the life of an offensive lineman, you can win the rep 48 out of 50 offensive snaps in the game, but those 2 times you lose and they lead the sacks, especially like a sack fumble. Oh, it gets ugly, man, and everybody's on your head for being the worst offensive lineman ever. I feel like he falls victim to that. I feel like a lot of offensive linemen fall victim to that. But I'm not gonna sit and act like Charles Leno is a great offensive lineman. He's serviceable. He's a decent starting left tackle at the NFL level. He's not great, but he's also not bad. So it is what it is, and of course, this is like the final season where cutting him doesn't make a lot of sense cap space wise, but going into the 2024 season, you cut him, you save like $12 million or something like that on the cap space. So if we don't go offensive lineman, probably tackle in the first round of this upcoming draft, the 2024 draft, and if he's not looking like an all-star Pro Bowl level tackle, he's probably up out of here. And then Nick Gates, we signed him over from the Giants. Even though he played more guard last year than center, he is more of a center. I feel like he's better at center. And as of right now, from voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamps, he's been our starting center. Ricky Strongberg just got to the point where he's on the second team. He was on the third team to start off-season practices, and then by the time we got the mandatory minicamps, he was able to be promoted to second team, but he's still not really up there with Nick Gates just yet. I hope by week 1 he will be, because ultimately that would be the best way for our offensive line to be the best offensive line that it can be. Ricky Strongberg at center. He didn't allow a single sack in the SEC last year, so that's huge. I mean, that alone is crazy, but as of right now, he's not ready. Nick Gates is a veteran. They know what you're getting from him. He comes with a certain floor. Nick Gates comes with a certain ceiling. I mean, my fault. Ricky Strongberg comes with a certain ceiling. Nick Gates comes with a certain floor that you can depend on him. You know what you're going to get from him. And at the very least, even though he had a really catastrophic injury over a year ago, he seems to be more consistently healthy, just game to game wise, other than that big major injury, than like a Tyler Larson or a Chase Roulier who we let go and guys like that. So we'll see. Ricky Strongberg doesn't have much of an injury history either. So that's pretty good that we not only added talent to our offensive line, especially the center position, other than letting Chase Roulier go, but we also added health and durability and availability. Then Samuel Cosme is your starting right guard. I think he has the potential to be a Brandon Sheriff all-pro level player at guard. I feel like the reason that he struggled at guard last year was because we were moving him back and forth between tackle and guard, not only within the season, but within the same game. He'll play some snaps at tackle, get benched because I guess it was like he was still coming back from injury or whatever, then play some snaps at guard, then go back to tackle, all within the same game, the same 4 quarters. Like, how is he expected to become a better offensive lineman that way? Playing guard and playing tackle are almost 2 completely different positions. You practice different. Your footwork is different. Your hand placement is, everything is literally different. The way you see the field, the guy to your left and right is just completely, you're in between 2 offensive linemen rather than being the only one on the outside by yourself. It requires a different level of strength. It requires a different level of mobility. And again, even the things you eat, the way you practice, the way you develop yourself, the things you work on in the offseason are different if you go in thinking you're a tackle versus you're a guard. So I'm thinking with him knowing that he's the starting right guard going into the season, he's going to be able to prepare everything strictly for that. And I think he's going to ball out. Now, the last person that we're going to talk about on this chart right here, this illustration, is Sadiq Charles, and he's somewhat of a surprise. Talent-wise, not necessarily, but he just keeps being hurt. And again, your best ability is your availability, and he just hasn't been that. But most importantly, the worst part about him getting hurt is that he's not able to develop. Every time he starts to develop a little bit, get a little bit of momentum, learn things here and there, it's never been talent. It's never been like his physical, natural ability. It's been all like mental things. And every time technique, mentally, he starts to develop a little bit, get a little momentum going, he gets hurt again. And it just keeps setting him back. And it's almost as if this is almost like a rookie Sadiq Charles almost. I know he's been in the league for a few years now, a couple of years now, but it's just without the ability to stay healthy, to go out there and develop, it's nothing he can really do. So I'm still surprised that he's even above Chris Paul, who looked really good against the Dallas Cowboys last year. I know Chris Paul's a 7th round pick. You know, he's only started in 1 NFL game so far in his entire career. Last year was his rookie season. He just got drafted. He's been on the Commanders for only a little bit over a year so far, but he looked really good against the Cowboys. I know Sadiq Charles has been in the league longer than him, and he's technically played more games than him, but I'm not exactly sure that it was enough for him to be above Chris Paul on the depth chart already. But but apparently he is, and I've been hearing great things about him so far in mandatory mini camps, especially in the screen game. He looks like all of that athleticism that he had from LSU, he didn't lose it. So that's one good thing about his injuries, that, like, you know, normally when guys get hurt, they lose some of that athleticism. It sounds like he has it in the screen game. He looks like one of our best offensive linemen. His mobility is insane. So that's really good. Our screen game should be far advanced this year. Eric Bieniemy is our offensive coordinator, and we got more mobile and more athletic on the offensive line. Our screen game should be crazy, and Sadiq Charles is a big part of that. So, hey, man, that's why he's just starting left guard right now. But, I mean, I thought Chris Paul was going to potentially be our starting left guard, maybe even Nick Gates if Ricky Strongberg or Chase Roulier, before we cut him, would be our center. So Nick Gates would be like our starting left guard or whatever, just by default. But the fact that Sadiq Charles is starting the left guard, I don't think Chris Paul got worse. I think Sadiq Charles just looks that good. So if anything, we should be optimistic about that, because I feel like since Sadiq Charles is our starting left guard, I just feel like that means he outperformed Chris Paul, who I already thought was good. So it sounds like we shouldn't have as much to worry about, but we still got to see once the pads come on, his full contact, especially when we go against the Ravens in those joint practices and leading up to that preseason game when we go against them. That's going to be the real test to see where Sadiq Charles is, and especially to see if he can stay healthy. Now, next up, I want to take a look at a scenario as to what I think may change at some point in training camp, like somewhere in the middle, maybe when we start to get into some preseason games and things like that. At some point in training camp, I think Chris Paul will eventually dethrone Sadiq Charles. Sadiq Charles is technically the veteran, has more experience than Chris Paul, but Chris Paul does, you can argue, come with a higher ceiling. And again, what I saw in that Cowboys game was like, oh, I'm good right there. That's my starting left guard right there. I'm good. So who knows? I'm not wishing any injuries on Sadiq Charles. And if Sadiq Charles wins the left guard position fair and square, more power to him. Y'all know I was a big Sadiq Charles fan coming out of the draft. I mean, you're the starting left tackle for the most explosive, arguably the best offense in college football history. You're doing something right. The talent is there. He only made it as far as he did in the draft because he was a little bit hurt and off the field concerns, but he was arguably one of the most talented offensive linemen in that entire draft. I believe it was a 2021 draft. So the talent is there for him as well, but I think Chris Paul, I feel like if you compare Chris Paul's best game, technically his only game against the Cowboys, versus Sadiq Charles's best game so far since he's been in the NFL, I feel like Chris Paul wins that. But as of right now, for Sadiq Charles to be starting over him, that speaks highly on it. But I wouldn't be surprised. Again, these are not necessarily my like super projections, like I'm sticking by it. This is what's gonna happen at some point in training camp. But I'm just warning you, don't be surprised if Chris Paul takes over at left guard at some spot, because that's a really talented left guard. And I think he has the potential to be a really good starting left guard at the NFL level for years to come. Now, next up, what's likely to happen by week 1? Well, really, if anything, this is what I hope happens by week 1. It's a little bit of a mix of what I hope happened and what will likely happen by week 1. This is after training camp going into the regular season. The changes, Nick Gates moves from center to left guard, and that's not because Sadiq Charles or Chris Paul are just bad at left guard. It's just because Ricky Strongberg was so good and he developed so quickly, and he has to start at center. And Nick Gates is just, he comes with a certain floor at left guard that you probably start him there. I wouldn't be surprised though that they treat Nick Gates like a West White. So if Ricky Strongberg is good enough to start at center for us, they believe he's that good. He's already surpassed Nick Gates already before week 1 of the regular season. He shows enough in training camp and preseason. Then I feel like if anything, they may use Nick Gates as like a Wes Schweitzer, where he's like the backup interior offensive lineman, guard or center, wherever you need him. He's ready to go if somebody gets hurt. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Chris Paul or Sadiq Charles starting the left guard and Nick Gates is your backup, to where if there's any injury anywhere in the interior offensive lineman, he's ready to step in. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he ended up starting the left guard for us, because Sadiq Charles maybe is banged up, or they just don't trust Sadiq Charles or Chris Paul enough yet to start them at left guard. Even though I'm hearing great things from Sadiq Charles, and again, the last time I saw Chris Paul, he looked great. I would not be surprised if Nick Gates is our starting left guard. And I'm saying that it will happen. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. I'm not even necessarily saying that it's my prediction. I'm just showing you the scenario of what could potentially happen. But again, what I hope happens there is that Ricky Strongberg, our 3rd round pick, is good enough to start day 1. You would hope that out of a 3rd round pick. Otherwise, you would have waited to like the 5th round to get him, where a lot of people thought you possibly could have gotten him that late in the draft. So And then, of course, like it says on the screen, Nick Gates played 213 snaps at left guard in 2022, only 132 snaps at center. It was almost even, basically, but he played more left guard than he played center last year for the Giants and looked really good, had a 69 Pro Football Focus pass block grade, so that may be enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Commanders don't just look at Pro Football Focus and be like, oh, his grade was that great at left guard. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're not even going to have a competition or anything. That's just what he's going to do type of thing. I doubt it's like that, of course. But for Pro Football Focus to grade him like that, he obviously did something right for the Giants. And if they want to play it safe, if you want to play it safe, Nick Gates at left guard makes a lot of sense for us. Now, the next scenario, probably the most fun one, is the highest ceiling scenario. Again, like I said in the intro, if everything works out to perfection, which I highly doubt happens, I wouldn't even put $1 on this happening. I wouldn't bet any types of money. If anything, I would bet you that this wouldn't happen. But for the fun of it, the highest ceiling scenario, if everybody on this roster, everybody in the offensive line depth chart, everybody reaches their ceiling, they become the best that they could possibly be, they're 100% healthy and everything like that, what would our offensive line exactly look like? It would look like this: Braden Daniels, because they're trying to develop him into a starting left tackle, because his mobility is insane. I mean, you can argue he has some of the best natural feet already in the NFL the day he was drafted. If we're talking about mobility and to be able to mirror edge rushers with your feet, which is more important than being able to mirror them with the rest of your body and your hands, your footwork is the most important. Braden Daniels' ceiling is ridiculous. First of all, his RAS score, a 9.48, elite speed, and a great explosion. I don't know why he didn't test agility, because on tape, I feel like his agility testing would have been the best out of all of it, because that's the reason they want to develop him as a left tackle. Right now, his size, he's too small. His strength, he's too weak. But if anything, if they can fix those things and then develop him, get him to learn a little bit better technique, that footwork you can't teach. That is like a 99, at least in the 90s percentile level of footwork for a left tackle at the NFL level even. So that ceiling right there is crazy. He should be a quick edge rusher, an outside linebacker, shutdown type of guy. I'm worried about him against stronger edge rushers like the Montez Sweat, Chase Youngs, but against like the Micah Parsons and the Hassan Reddicks, he should be the type of guy to annoy the mess out of them if he reaches his ceiling, which again, I'm not banking on. I think he will ultimately just, by playing the numbers safe, I'd say that he probably will just end up at guard and he will never reach that ceiling at tackle. But man, if he does, crazy. Chris Paul, the same thing, man. If we're talking about out of all of the guards, excluding Samuel Cosmi, his RAS score says it all. A 9.46, elite speed, good agility, good explosion, good size. But I mean, if we're talking about mobility, even the way that he looked against the Cowboys in his first start in his NFL career, his ceiling is insane. It may not be to that of a Samuel Cosmi. Technically, Samuel Cosmi has one of the highest ceilings in NFL history at offensive line. We're going to get to that later. But as of right now, man, Chris Paul is just a different type of guy as well. Sadiq Charles has a very high ceiling as well. I just think Chris Paul's ceiling just a little bit higher. Ricky Strongberg, a crazy ceiling. You can look at it on tape again, allowing 0 sacks against the SEC. If he can figure it out at the NFL level, he's going to be a true beast right there. Remember, Chase Roulier was like a franchise center for us, other than the fact that he got hurt, that kept getting hurt. That's why we ended up cutting him. We drafted him in the 5th round. Ricky Strongberg drafted in the 3rd round. We should expect even more of him. Chase Roulier was a top 5 center when healthy. Again, availability is your best ability, so it's hard to say he was the top 5 center when he only plays half the games. For like, at the very least, you got to deduct him and move him down the tier list for that alone. But when healthy, Chase Roulier was a top 5 center. So with him being drafted in the 5th round, Ricky Strongberg being drafted in the 3rd round, I feel like those should be our expectations for those guys. And his ceiling is that. He has a 9.75 RAS score, good speed, but elite agility and elite explosion. And if I had to pick the two things I care about the most on an RAS score, what I want my offensive lineman to have, it is explosion and agility. That means he's mobile on screens, he's mobile as a puller, getting to the second level to block linebackers and DBs. And then the explosion means that off the snap, he's really strong. He should be able to engage guys and win immediately off the snap, and just should already have an advantage as soon as the ball is hiking, things like that. Be able to move guys off the ball in the run game with that level of explosion. So Ricky Strongberg, one of the highest ceilings on this entire offensive line. I just hope we can get it out of him. Samuel Cosmi, of course, I feel like this one's pretty obvious. A 9.99 RAS score. And He ranked second out of 1,143 offensive tackles drafted since 1987 in RAS score, which means he's the second most athletic tackle, guard, whatever you want to call him, drafted to the NFL since 1987. That, I mean, what more do we need to say with the ceiling there? If he can reach his potential, you can argue he's supposed to technically, athleticism-wise, be even better than Brandon Sheriff, but to just assume that Samuel Cosme will be better than an all-pro guard, I mean, it's just hard to say. But again, that's why we're having fun here. We're talking about ceilings. We're not talking about what's most realistic. We're talking about what's the best case scenario. These are your guys. And then lastly, Jared Jones-Smith, the guy that we brought over from the XFL. You can argue he was the best offensive lineman in the XFL, easily the best tackle in the XFL. He has loads of potential as well. The only reason that he's above Cornelius Lucas is because Cornelius Lucas has this size, this height, like 6'8", this weight that you can't teach. But we've already seen the best of Cornelius Lucas. I don't think he just has days ahead of him where it's just something suddenly gonna click and he's just gonna be way better than what we've seen. He's solid, but I don't think even with the size that he is, just the natural freak of nature build that he has much of a ceiling past what we've already seen. Otherwise, I would have put him there. This was like 5 years ago, Cornelius Lucas would have been the obvious answer at right tackle. But as of right now, I think he's pretty much peaked. I mean, maybe there are chances that he could get better here and there with certain things, but I'm just not sure. I feel like he's just automatically eliminated from the running. So without Cornelius Lucas included, Jared Jones-Smith is the obvious answer at right tackle. I love Andrew Wiley, and I like Charles Leno at tackle. Both of those guys come with considerable floors, but when we're talking about ceiling, Jared Jones-Smith, man, I'm really excited about his potential. And I mean, the interesting thing with him, out of all of these guys on this offensive line that you're looking at right now, he's the guy that he may not even make the 53-man roster. But if we're talking about ceilings, he's up there with those guys. He's up there easily in the top 7 out of all of the offensive linemen we have on roster. And then lastly, just for a little bit of fun, because I feel like somebody will appreciate this, even if it's only one of y'all, just to go ahead and throw this out there. The heaviest offensive line we could put together. You have Aaron Montero, 320 pounds. Chris Paul, 324. Tyler Larson, 335. Andrew Norwell, 325, even though we're going to cut him as soon as he's healthy enough to be cut. And then Cornelius Lucas, 328, again at 6'8". That's the heaviest that's the heaviest lineup that we can throw out there as an offensive line. Doesn't mean anything. It's not like we'll just throw these guys out there to run the ball any random plays. We'll never do that. You'll never see this offensive line out there. I highly doubt Aaron Montero even makes a team. Cornelius Lucas is a backup swing tackle. Andrew Norwell is going to get cut as soon as we can. And then Tyler Larson is at the highest, your third string center. So we'll never see this combination. But again, just for the fun of it, I wanted to go ahead and put this together. So yeah, man, that's the end of this video, man. I really appreciate y'all. Appreciate the support. Thank you for checking out this video and staying here the entire time. Please leave a like in this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about all of these combinations, projections, alignments, scenarios, everything like that. Do you feel like this video was worth it? Do you want more videos like this? Of course, like I already said, I'm working on a defensive version of this where we have the defensive line, linebackers, and DBs all out there. It's going to be the same thing. You have the defensive line, their pictures and their names at the bottom, lined up together, the linebackers and the DBs around them, corners on the outside, safeties at the top, slot corner somewhere like in between the corner and the defensive line, things like that. You'll see. So let me know if you like these type of videos, if I should keep making them and thinking of more scenarios. Give me some ideas for more scenarios as well if you want them. Again, I've already worked on a defensive one. Let me know what other ideas you may have. Maybe I can work on like a certain receiver one, like if we're trying to pick up a 3rd and 20 on offense, what should we do? If we need a 1st and 5, if we like 2nd and inches, what do we should do? Things like the offense. Just let me know. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Again, the Commanders are about to go through a super dip period. Tomorrow, as in Tuesday, is our last practice until training camp, which is like 5-6 weeks away. So I'm gonna keep y'all updated on that tomorrow as well. But even though, again, I'm going to keep saying that the Commanders are going through a 5-6 week dip period, but Rico of Street Score is going to keep hitting y'all with content every day, so stay tuned. Without further ado, I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.